it's lesson 4. We're here together, and I thank you so much for showing up. We had last time we talked about magnification and gratitude, and today we're going to talk about magnification and resentment. So one of the things about resentment is it's easy to talk about. It's hard to dig out, because resentment is the opposite of happiness, just so you know. So the reason that we're talking about it early on in our conversation is because resentment is about feeling like you've been treated poorly, that you've been mistreated in some way. And it can be for a variety of things. Maybe that you didn't feel heard, maybe that it's just disappointment, or it's anger. It can be disgust, it can be spite, it can be envy, it can be really a lot of things. And we can also be the purveyors of magnifying resentment. So one of the things that I want to talk about today is not just building on how are we cultivating our fields. We're here to build prosperity, and we're here to come from a prosperous mindset. But that also means that we have to understand ourselves to be well within, to understand what is in our well and what we're putting out there. And many people have habits that build resentment. So they are building resentment. You can't magnify from resentment or magnify in a manner that creates resentment. And those are the two facets here, is that many people build resentment. They build resentment by not listening to somebody. They build resentment by judging harshly. They build resentment by putting out really unrealistic expectations. They build resentment by just, having a bunch of sabotage behaviors around relationships that they brought in. So, that if you want a prosperous life, and you want a life that is filled with grace and honor and love and ease and all those things, right? We have to do a YOU turn. You have to look right here, YOU, you have to do a U-turn, to look right within and say, what am I doing? Am I holding resentments about things that people have said to me? And when we look at getting at resentment, it's a gnarly little root that it is hard to dig out. And sometimes, we have to really pull on lots of things because it's strong. And it can really, it makes us cut communication. It cuts us, it halts us from intimacy. And that's the thing that I will always ask people. In identifying the resentments that you have, let's identify the source, number 1, right? Out of the 4 steps that you have to do on resentment, the first step is to identify, what am I holding resentment about? And that resentment can be on a lot of things. It's not just I was disgusted. It's not just that I envy that person. They have everything and they don't understand. I have, siblings do this all the time, right? Siblings do this all the time. I lovingly tell my brother that he's the golden child, that I make him do all the things that are really hard with my stepdad, because David always has the right answer. So I'll give David, I'm not going to hold resentment against him for that. He happens to be the oldest boy. So I don't have to harbor that, but it is there. He is the one that everyone listens to, and he's smart and he's handsome and he's tall and just lovely. And so I'll send him a little cheat list of like, hey, here's all the stuff I need you to talk to Dad about. And we don't have to come from this other place of, even though I go, well, you're the golden child. I could hold that as anger, but it's not really going to build our relationship. It's not good about that. So many people still hold that as resentment, that they may have a brother that is the best, the one that never does anything wrong, right? When we hold those resentments, we will always magnify from them. And sometimes those will become triggers. And sometimes that becomes other stuff that's kind of crummy to feel all the time. So we're really looking at, right, not magnifying in resentment, not magnifying from the place that we are holding resentment, or that we're constantly giving it out, that we're slinging it. And if you want to know how are you slinging resentment, it's not listening. It's not listening. It is always wanting to be right. No, that's not the way it's going to be done. It just makes you all clench. It makes me clench just thinking about it. Right? That we are coming in with ease, with poise, with grace, with honor, with ability, with availability into every part of our life. To be prosperous means that we are well within, and we can move from a place that is always well within. And the greatest block is anger, resentment, contempt, disappointment, that we are holding these grudges. And when we hold these grudges, it is the opposite of happiness. It's the opposite. It's the opposite of what you're trying to do. So one, identify them, and build, finding your resentments. It may be that it is attached to a thing, to the thing, to the thing, to the thing, to the thing, right? When you hear me talk about finding stuff, digging it out, it's usually not the thing that comes up on top. It's the thing under the thing, under the thing, under the thing. It's down there a bit. So finding the identifying part of the source. And then I'm going to have to look at a new way to look at it. And when we look at that resentment, the ones that are, that we just dig in on are often from relationships that we value. And the number one reason, relationships that we value, and it is about a topic that you value. So when you go back in and start to identify that source, if you've done your values work and you've done some of these other things, if you're new to it, well, guess what? It's coming up again. You'll see resentment again. But when we start to identify that source, the reason you want to look in at your own resentment, not just because it's filled with grief and muck and you want to get rid of it, or that you want to resolve it, it is because it's really revealing. And I would go in with a curious nature, because when you figure out what it is that you're resentful of, it will reveal something that is of great importance to you. And so not being heard may be that it's really important for you to have voice. It's very important for you to be able to decide what you do with your life. It may be about something completely different. So you want to kind of get around that gnarled root and just find out, where did it start? And the other thing about resentment that's different than anger, is that it really can build over time. And the longer it builds, the more there is other fallout, that you end up with kind of magnifying bereavement, the need for bereavement. But you end up having that maybe trigger, or this thing, and then that thing, and then this thing, and then that thing. And it becomes this amplification, right? Because we will magnify from what we are. We will magnify. We hear this about money all the time, right? Money's a magnifier. It's going to magnify whatever you had. If you had bad habits back here, you're going to have more bad habits. If you had good habits back here, you're going to build more good habits. So it is a magnifier. We are magnifying all the time. You are magnifying all the time. And when you are building a really defined line to say, I'm going to become wildly passionate about being prosperous in this one little wild and precious life that I have. I'm going to focus on being prosperous, to come from a state of knowing that I will magnify out. If you are magnifying in resentment, it's not going to be good. It spirals downward. So one, identify the source. Two, you're going to have to develop a new way to look at it. And the way that I would look at it is really that it's time to change, that it's time to evolve, that it's time to cleanse that piece, not kill it and throw it away, but to give that bereavement the honor that it deserves. That I can go back in and really say, let me hold this space, and let me hold a little sacred spot in it in my day today, or in my day today, every day for the next 30 days. That's why people do longer periods, because most of us have an enormous amount of resentments. Some of them are small, some of them are big, but some of them are really big. So, right, to develop a new way to look at it. And that is only after you kind of identify it and start writing it out, right? You have to kind of do the journaling on it, right? Here's the resentment, and here's all the ways that you look at it. And when you look at it that way, I usually talk to it, that I usually kind of go, oh man, here are all the ways that it really impacted me negatively. Some resentments that we now hold in a way that made us make different decisions for a lot of our lives. And so there's a way that we have to kind of look at it generously with a heart that is curious, not filled with tears and bereavement. So then a lot of times with all of the healing that we do around forgiveness, because this is basically forgiveness training, is that we kind of write a letter to it, right? Here's this is what it meant, right? But then key number four, you have to see your life without it, or with it being different. You have to visualize a future. And here's how I'm going to live my life. So you will see this technique. I usually do it in 7 steps, but today I'm just going to give it to you for 4. As we do other work, I'll give you the longer piece of how to manage forgiveness. But when we are looking at resentment, it is very similar to the process of forgiveness. And you have to be able to say, and here's how I'm going to see myself in the future as being someone who is valuable and heard, and there's not a penalty for not knowing the answer. And then again, I always kind of follow that up with a U-turn, right? What are you slinging? What are you saying? How many times are you now the person who's inflicting that pain on others by not listening, by having unrealistic expectations, by being short and curt and angry? You don't have to be that way, because it's easy to not be that way when we are well within, right? Taking the time to look within, and that's what we're doing. And that's what I'm really the most thankful for about you being here, is that you're taking the time, that you're willing to hold yourself in esteem, right? That's a self-esteem, right? We're going to hold ourselves in esteem, and we're going to generously, thoughtfully, gracefully, rebelliously, and notoriously big claim this beautiful life of yours. And magnifying from resentment isn't going to work for you long term, because the more you grow in a positive way, the less resentment will even fit. It's just not the job. It's just not what you're going to do. So there are some worksheets that are here. We've got some other things that you can look at. But again, thank you for lesson number 4 on the magnification part. And I will see you soon. This is a big topic, so hang out with yourself. Be nice. Bye.